Hello and welcome. Chris from Missouri here, bringing you another video about vintage baseball cards. And in this video, I'm going to show you some cards, some of my favorite cards. And this video was prompted by my trip to the local card shop. I went into the local card shop and I bought this magazine. Now let me turn the phone around and I'll start the video and I'll show you some cards. So as you can see, I bought the Beckett Vintage Collector magazine. And this is just like the old Beckett. I've been buying this from my local card shop for a few years now. And I just think they're getting better. There's stories in here about collecting stories. There's stories about players. And like they have a big story in here about Johnny Bench. And you know, they also have stories in here about football, basketball, and hockey, and then other stuff about other card collecting, like non-sport stuff. Now this one, when I walked in, I saw this Johnny Bench and I picked it up, and it prompted me to do this video. And so I'm going to show some cards and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Johnny Bench, and at the end I'm going to flip the phone around and then I'm going to tell you a story that I believe is funny, and I hope you think so too. So I'm going to start showing some cards right now. Now, I consider myself a master collector of Johnny Bench, or a super collector. Now, I'm not going to show all the cards because, man, there's a lot of them. You know, the Fleer and Donruss and just a bunch of stuff. But I do collect some autographs of Johnny Bench. There's 84. That's his last card. 83 is his last playing days card. And I'm going to show you some tops and even some Kellogg stuff, but I'm going to try to keep it to that. So this is 1982. Now, Johnny Bench was a 14-time All-Star with the same team. He never played for anybody else. He was a 2-time World Series champion. He was a 2-time National League MVP. He was a World Series MVP. And in 1968, he won Rookie of the Year. And also that year, and I believe, was the first catcher to win Rookie of the Year. Now in '68, he won his first Golden Glove, and as a catcher, and then he went on a run of. He actually ended up winning 10 times the Gold Glove award. He was a 2-time National League home run leader, and so in the decade of the 70s, I believe he has the third most home runs of anybody else. I know he's behind Willie Stargell. I don't know who else he's behind. Probably somebody like Mike Schmidt. Somebody you can please let me know. But I know he was third. Now, he led the National League in RBIs twice, and I believe he's the all-time runs batted in leader of the decade of the 70s. So he was definitely one of the best players in the 70s. Now I became a Johnny Bench fan because I was born, and I keep saying this because I just love saying it out loud. I was born in Greasy Creek, Kentucky. And they didn't have a professional team really to root for, and so the Reds were shown on everybody's TV. So when I was at my grandfather's house, I'd watch his TV, and he was a Cincinnati Reds fan. And then my cousin, who lived in Indiana, who was a big influence on me when it came to collecting cards, and his favorite team was the Cincinnati Reds, and his favorite player was Pete Rose, and mine was Cincinnati, or mine was Johnny Bench, and it was nice that we had that in common. Now, that 76 card there is my favorite card. I've shown that before, and I've let you know that, but it just, that's just a great card, and it's in a low grade for me, but it's my card that I've had for a long time, and so it won't be replaced by any other. Now, Johnny Bench's jersey is retired by the Cincinnati Reds. He's in the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame. He was named to the Major League Baseball All-Century team. He was named to Major League Baseball's all-time team. In 1989, he was elected to the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. And a few years back, and I don't know the exact time, I'm going to look it up and see, so I should have done that before this video, but a few years back, I believe the Hall of Fame members voted for the 4 greatest living players. And at that time, they voted for Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Sandy Koufax, and Johnny Bench. And there were some people, friends of mine, that took a little bit of issue. I mean, not like mad or anything, that Johnny Bench and Sandy Koufax were on there. And their argument about Sandy Koufax was his career was too short. And their argument about Johnny Bench was, that they just didn't think he was one of the 4 greatest players. But if you think about it, and if you're like me, I believe that catching is the hardest position on the field. And if you're the greatest player that ever played the hardest position, I think you need to be ranked pretty high. And so for that, I think Johnny Bench is a little bit underrated when it comes to the all-time greatness. Now, he's not underrated because there's a lot of people that think he's the greatest catcher of all time. But there's not a lot of people that rank him really, really high as far as the all-time stuff goes. Now, his WAR was high, but, his WAR was nothing like the likes of Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth and those guys. But I do believe, like I said, he was the greatest player at his position. And if you don't believe that, well, you're wrong. And, please let me know who you think the greatest player was. But no, I'm kidding about you being wrong, because there's arguments out there. I mean, I believe Johnny Bench is the greatest catcher. I believe Yogi Berra is second. I believe Ivan Rodriguez is third. Roy Campanella is fourth, and Gary Carter's fifth. And I used to have that argument with my dad all the time, but because his favorite player was Roy Campanella, and he just always, I said this before, he'd end the argument by saying, "Hey, listen, Roy Campanella was the best player in baseball 30% of the time that he played," meaning he played 10 years and got 3 MVPs, and that's hard to beat. But Johnny Bench was the reason I became a catcher. You could watch, and I bet you can find these on YouTube. And I'm going to turn the phone around and tell you my quick story. You can find Johnny Bench on YouTube, maybe the Baseball Bunch, that kind of stuff, and he influenced a lot of kids. And he kind of revolutionized the game. And Joe Garagiola said that he ruined catching for forever by the way he one-handed caught. And he blocked balls with the best of them, but he did it with so much ease, and so everybody tried to emulate him. Now, the story I'm going to tell you is when steroids came out, and everybody was arguing back and forth. I believe Major League Baseball, I think, kind of sent him out as an ambassador to help, get people back in the stands. And I remember him being asked about steroid use, and he really didn't. He really wasn't upset at those players that used them, and I still think to this day he doesn't. He would like to see him get in the Hall of Fame, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But I've heard him in an interview talk, not very happy with Pete Rose, and I believe part of that was because when all that stuff came down with Pete Rose, that was the year Johnny Bench would be inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1989, and so every time he was out to celebrate him getting inducted, and a sportscaster, a host, they would always during that time ask him about what he thinks about Pete Rose. And I think that hardened Johnny Bench just a little bit. But when he was out one time talking about steroid use and kind of forgiving these players, and I believe that the dates might be wrong, different things, but I do know what he said. One of the reporters said, "What do you think about the players using performance-enhancing drugs?" And his response was, "I am 64 years old and I got a 2-year-old son. You tell me about what you think about performance-enhancing drugs." And I just thought that was funny. So, hey, listen, it's only a hobby. Collect what you like.